yourself. And yeah, off you go.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So viruses, antivirus, or a virus basically is a type of malicious software. It's a type of malware. They basically, it's like ransomware. You know, you've got stuff like that, which is essentially the way it works is that you, generally speaking, click on a link that you're directed to, which you wouldn't know, which is, for example, it might be a link that seems legitimate. It might be, so I don't know, you know, for example, next.co.uk, but that then directs you to something completely, you know, the opposite to the actual website you're intending to go to. Now, you know, the thing about that is that when I did the phishing workshop last week, I did mention, and I sent links out for this, is in relation to being very careful when you click on a hyperlink. Now, a hyperlink is exactly that. So when you have a link to go to another website, you have to be very careful what you're clicking on. Now, malware, which is typically, you know, malicious software generally comes under, viruses are come under malicious software. They're categorized under that. Malware is typically downloaded in the forms of a link over email. What will happen is, you know, and then what will happen is you may be requested to enter your email address so that you get further information. That's how a lot of companies work, you know, if you want to be on their mailing list. Now, what can malware do? Basically, the most common type of malware is a malicious code. Now, what that means is that it essentially, once you execute the file, it will download in the background, and you won't even know it's there in many cases. But what will happen is that you know, the virus will, in certain instances, you may not know it's there, or you might basically hijack certain processes that you're undertaking. For example, if you're doing home banking on that computer, I always tell people, as I said last week, if you join the workshop, to always keep your computer separate or device separate that you're doing your banking on, to the one you generally use for browsing the internet. That gives you a sense of, I know it's not always possible, but where you can do, that's better. Now, if you can't do that, then there's other ways in which you can protect yourself, and we'll come on to that later, which is why I'm talking about this. But essentially, if you can do that, that's the best way to do it. Or essentially, you know, there are a number of ways in which you can actually try and further protect yourself the best way you can. Now, usually viruses come as an executable file. You click on them and then they download, and then I think one of them, you know, some of the viruses will basically take over certain functions of a computer. And a lot of the most common ones, for example, is that, you know, you get spam emails from an individual's email address. You get loads of emails, and they don't even know they've actually had a virus on their system, or they've been compromised, or their passwords have been compromised. Now, the other type of malware is something called a worm. Now, a worm is a type of malware because it infects systems in a very specific way. It starts from one machine, and then it, like a worm, it works its way over to another machine. Now, this usually can happen on a network. So if you've got a network, the whole network gets affected. It's generally more to do with the network system. So if you've got 20 or 30 computers in a network, they'll all get infected because the worm will work its way from one to the other. And it can infect entire networks. So it can be very, very damaging to you know, to users, because if it's an entire network gets affected, it has the potential to bring down an entire network and numerous devices. Now, spyware is one that everyone's common on. The word spyware. Spyware is, as it's designed, as it states, is designed to actually spy on what the user is doing. Now, this comes exactly to doing certain transactions on the website. Now, if you go to a secure website, you'll notice it says HTTPS, which means it's a secure website. Now, the HTTPS should give you a degree of protection, but the thing about it is you always need to check whether the certificate's valid. So whether the company's got a valid certificate, which you can quite easily check on there by clicking on it. And the other thing you need to check is whether or not, you know, so it's essentially when you're entering your data, for example, if you're doing a transaction to buy something, the link between you and the server of that particular company is a secure one, generally speaking. Now, if you've got spyware, what happens is they can see which keystrokes you're making. So that enables them or to actually get your information and then utilize that information to get access to your accounts. Now, that can be credit card details, passwords, other sensitive, it can be a whole host of information. Now, the other thing, the other type of malware or malicious, malware is Trojan. This is the Greek Trojan horse. What happens is this type of malware hides within or disguises itself as something totally innocuous. And the malware will then collect information without the user knowing. Now, this can be one of the most difficult ones to detect because it can be seemingly a very innocuous program that you've downloaded. And it's there harvesting data. Now, even certain legitimate softwares can be categorized as a Trojan in some ways because they harvest information about what sites you're visiting, where you're going to. But that's another issue. I'll come on to that later. Why I'm saying that is in terms of I'll qualify that later. Now, how do you get around that? That's something that you can do now with the right software. Now, the other type of sort of malware is called ransomware. Now, ransomware is where, I don't know, the most common one, most common one we had recently was where individuals, are asking access to your, they were asking for certain amounts of money to pay to basically allow you to use your, your computer, or they would put an executable file on your system. I don't know, one of the most common ways of doing that is this. So you get a phone call from a company saying you are on Virgin. Oh, this is Virgin of technical support. We need you to go on your computer because there's a problem with the, with your broadband. People go onto their computer. They said, go to this website, which, because you've got somebody on the phone who appears to be from Virgin, you download something, and then the next thing you know, they've locked your computer. And then what they will do is they will ask you for £100 or whatever it is to actually unlock your system, to take that bit of software that they put on there off. So you have to be very careful about, again, which sites you're visiting. And it can be very expensive. I mean, companies are held to ransom. I mean, there probably are loads and loads of ransomware demands. A lot of the large companies will not actually advertise that they've had ransomware attacks because it undermines their integrity. But I know it's a very common occurrence. However, even with their sophisticated so-called defenses, there are companies that get breached, and they will be held to ransom, or because effectively they may have a disgruntled employee or something, or they may have other issues which enables them to be compromised. Now, malware itself has its own way of creating havoc, and most rely on an action of some kind, which is what I've just told you about. Clicking on a link, getting a phone call, installing software on your computer, installing software from which seems totally innocuous and then turns out to be spyware or Trojan. You may click on a link via email. We get emails on our smartphones nowadays. If we're expecting an email from a particular individual, we may get 20 other emails, and we may click on that email and not know that what we're clicking on, before we know it, we've actually downloaded something that is not welcome at all. So I always say to people, if you're going to, if you're expecting an email that's important and you're out and about, get yourself somewhere where you can spend at least 2 or 3 minutes looking at your emails to know that what you're actually getting, because it's very important to know the substance of what you're actually downloading and what you're clicking on, because within a few clicks you can actually cause more problems for yourself than you'd ever imagined. Mobile phones are just as vulnerable as devices, because mobile phones are mini computers. So you can actually brick a mobile phone, which means you can render it completely useless with a malware sort of program or file, and you need to be very careful. Now, how do you protect against malware? Now you understand a little bit about it. the first and most important form of defense is vigilance. No matter how good your antivirus program is or your malware program is, you have to be vigilant. And that means you should always be aware of what it is you're clicking on. It's like caveat emptor, which in Latin means let the buyer be aware. It's a similar thing. Let the individual who's transacting be aware of what they're actually doing. And you should always be aware of what you're downloading. Like for example, Farouk's got the accounting software, and he knows the name of the company that it's basically purchased it from. However, if he gets a link to a different link than what you're used to, I would say, listen, go back to the company, say, is this link valid? Is this the proper link that I'm going to be downloading from? And if they say no, then don't load it. I always say to people, if in doubt, don't download, don't go without, because essentially it's better to be extra cautious than save yourself a lot of problems later on the line. Now, the other option is basically the easiest to implement, which is to download antivirus software. Now, I'm not going to recommend a specific type of software. There's so many out there, but generally speaking, the more I'd say, I'm not going to recommend these, but I'd say you can look at companies like Kaspersky. If you go to Which Magazine, Which Magazine prints every year they print their list of best sort of antivirus programs in terms of the level of protection. Now, you need to bear in mind that software needs to complete 3 or 4 different functions. First of all, it should offer you a firewall type protection, which means it should offer you a line of defense for someone trying to get access to your computer. Secondly, it should offer you an anti-malware program, which a lot of them do come bundled with now, which is effectively you get like what I was just talking about, the ransomware and the spyware especially. And then there is the other thing is that the other thing you need to be constantly aware of is it monitors the network. If you've got a network, you have ones which are more corporate based or more multi-user based, network based, which will monitor the network. When I'm in my network, with a network that I would set up, for example, at home, I've got a hardware firewall, which basically is different to a software one because it's actually a physical barrier. But I mean, in terms of standalone computers, or even if some people have 2 or 3 computers which are networked at home, and there are softwares which are available to give them that level of protection. You get licenses for 2 or 3 of them. Now, basically, that is essentially what malware is. Now, in terms of how do you actually stop yourself from getting a virus, with the best will in the world, there is no 100% safe solution, because if somebody's determined to get access to a particular system, then they will do so. But however, what you can do is to basically make sure you're best protected against that. Now, there are a number of things you can use. One of the things I always tell people, this is not so much a malware protector, but it's something called a virtual private network. Now, what a virtual private network does is basically it allows you to have a level of anonymity. So, for example, if you're sitting in the UK, you might have for example, let's use Nord as an example, which I've used. So Nord has servers all over Europe, and I think increasingly across the world now. So you could set yourself up as being sitting in London, but you're physically being looked at. You're physically, according to the VPN, you are in Morocco, in Casablanca or somewhere, or in Tangiers. So what will happen is that and I can give you an example of that. So for example, if you go to a website that only allows people from the UK, that website will not allow you, because it recognizes from the IP address that you're not sitting in the UK, you're sitting in Tangiers. Now, the good thing about that is that it offers you a level of protection. Now, VPNs are a good idea. You can get them for free, or you can basically get ones that you pay for. That's in addition to anything else that you want to get. And I think it's a good idea, especially on a mobile device like a iPad or a tablet. It's a good thing to have that to consider. Now, in terms of what else you can do, you can have something called a standalone malware program. There used to be a program called Malware Bytes, which used to be free. Well, I don't think it's free anymore. But there is something I can look at the free resources. I think you can get Avast, which is Avast is a free antivirus if you don't want to pay for the full version. In fact, the Avast free version is just as good as the paid for version. So if you don't want to pay for antivirus, and there's some people who don't want to pay for a yearly updates, it's a good standalone antivirus protector. I've got a friend who's in IT who uses it, been using it for a number of years, and said it works perfectly well. So that basically gives you an idea of what antivirus is and how you protect yourself. In terms of the software, I would always say look at your needs, what you need. Look at how many licenses you want to buy, how many devices have you got in your house. If you've got multiple devices, then it's good to buy one that gives you up to 4 or 5 devices. Some of them now offer at least, I think, 3 devices minimum. Some offer 6 to at least a 5 or whatever, because they recognize that if you're in a family, you're going to have more than one device. So that's one thing you need to look at. The other thing you need to look at is what level of protection it's offering you. Is it offering you protection against viruses? Is it malware? Have you got a firewall included? A lot of them now have what they call an Internet Defender software bundle, which is covering all sorts of exactly that, malware, antivirus, and basically spyware, and you've got a firewall. So you've got the whole host of got a whole suite of protection there. So yeah, that's essentially what's the in a nutshell, really, what it is. I can go into a lot more detail, but I don't think it's relevant. I think that's the best way to sort of give you an idea of what malware is and how it works in terms of how it can actually cause problems to for us as end users. So if anyone's got any questions, please feel free. Any questions? Yeah, you're on mute. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, those free software after the trial period, like Avast, they start asking payment.
No, there is a completely free version of Avast. You don't have to pay anything. So there's the paid for version. You've got to be careful what you're downloading. So, for example, with Avast, there is a completely free version. You don't pay anything for it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So you just download it, and it sits in the background, does its job. Because I've got a friend who's been using Avast for a number of years, and he uses the free version, and he's happy with that. So it works well for him. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, D,
Yeah.
can you explain VPN?
So virtual private network, essentially what it is it's like basically a mask. So effectively what a VPN does is, if you're sitting in, so you have to subscribe to a service that offers VPN. So what will happen is, when your computer has got a VPN installed, or your tablet or whatever, when you've got something like Nord or one of the many other ones that are out there, what will happen is you will basically connect to the VPN provider's server in a particular country or location, and then that traffic will go through that server and go back to the internet. So effectively, there's a barrier between you and the internet, because essentially what's happening is that, for all intensive purposes, you might be sitting in Acorn, but you might be in, I don't know, you might be in, it's saying, the VPN saying you're in Glasgow, or you're in Wales, or you're in wherever. So I mean, that's what a VPN does essentially. So I mean, it offers you that level of, that sort of, it's like a barrier in between you and the internet. It's like a proxy. A proxy server works in a similar way, because a proxy directs traffic through a specific server and then out. It's like when you go to a shopping center, it will ask you to log in. If I know you don't, but I mean, generally people want to connect to the Wi-Fi for free. That service that's coming up is what I call a proxy. So a company will get all the information of the individual's device, and then they send you the information on not in a malicious way, but they'll send you all the information via email on any updates from the shopping center. Now, that's the best way to explain it, really.
Ask him.
Okay, now, when I tried to put a VPN on my telephone, I phoned Apple
Yeah,
because Diane had it and I didn't. And I thought it was because I had an older version.
yeah.
But Apple said you don't need it with Apple because they do their own scrambling.
Right.
Now, do you know if that's correct?
Not that I've heard of. Basically, for I mean, I've had VPN on my older Apple phone. I had Nord a couple of years ago, and that worked very well. I mean, the scrambling that they're talking about presumably means encryption. It means it's encrypted. I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't heard definitively that is the best thing to have.
All right. Now, WhatsApp tells you it's encrypted when you make a telephone call or you send a message.
Yes.
So that's correct, is it?
Yes, it's got end-to-end encryption. So effectively, the encryption basically means that it's got to be encrypted at both ends, and it's encrypted from the time you send it to the time it actually goes and hits the other individual's device. So it's got end-to-end encryption, which means it's scrambled. Basically, it just means that instead of the words being in order, they're sort of all over the place. You take hello, and hello's 15, lines down, and it's the letters are somewhere else, and the numbers are somewhere else, and it's basically, that's in the easiest way to explain it. That's how encryption works, essentially. So yeah, it's how they work with WhatsApp.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you can't go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone got any other questions?
What's the benefit of having a VPN on your mobile phone? Then? I don't.
It just offers you a level of protection. I mean, basically, effectively, it's not like having an antivirus, but it's good because effectively, if you're doing stuff on the move, it offers you that level of anonymity as to where you are, and gives you that level of protection, because you're having to go through you're going through another server to get in. You have to go into a server to get out to another.
I see the point of the VPN in general. So it's not tracking everything back to you personally.
That's right. Basically, you can't be tracked back because you have to go through, loads of different sort of. So that's the advantage.
Why is that particularly advantageous for a mobile rather than?
Because essentially, with a mobile device, there's lots of instances where individuals, where data compromised, if they go into public Wi-Fi, or if you're out and about, your Bluetooth is on, people leave their Bluetooth on for a variety of reasons. It just offers you that level of level of protection, basically.
So you're saying the VPN will scramble my
Location.
not just location, but the thing like if I go onto my computer, what do you call it, emails, will it still on my telephone?
No, it won't scramble anything. What it will do is that if you are physically, in order for them to get access, if you're using a VPN, you're not going directly onto the internet. You're going through a server to connect to the internet. So you're having to go through a third party to connect to the internet. For example, it could be ExpressVPN, it could be Surfshark, could be CyberGhost. These are a number of companies that offer it. So essentially what will happen is you'll be using their servers to connect to even if you're in the UK, it would basically, that means they have to go through, someone's tracing you back, they have to go back through that sort of loop to get back to your device, basically. It offers you a barrier between you and the internet.
So they have virus checkers on their server, do they?
They will do, yeah, they will have protection.
That's the added.
I mean, but it is not a, I must stress, it is not a, what do you call it?
Foolproof.
Yeah, it's not an antivirus.
But is it good to have that? Have a third?
Yeah, because a VPN essentially what it does is created, it's software created to protect your online privacy.
Okay.
Make it harder for hackers by anonymizing your traffic. Because if you're anonymizing your traffic going through a server, you can't actually see what traffic you're actually, where you're going. I mean, how do companies like Google and and the big companies get your data because it's not you're going directly. They harvest loads of information about your your lifestyle, what you go to,
What you like and what you keep in
Yeah.
checking.
basically, yes. So I mean, a VPN can help you protect you in a few ways. Key ways. According to effectively, when you connect to a VPN server, all the internet traffic you're generating is encrypted.
Can't hear.
Can you hear, Helen?
No, there's noise in the background.
I think that's
Ronnie,
Oh,
can you
sorry,
mute?
is that mine?
Yeah.
Hang on. Yes, I'll mute. I'll try and get my earphones in properly. They keep them.
okay. So I mean, essentially, what happened is
I knew it was her.
the great thing about the VPN is it masks your IP address.
Sorry.
Sorry. The great thing about VPN is that it masks your IP address. To answer your question, Phil. So what happens is that obviously the IP address, as Phil will know, is basically like your postcode and your house, your door number. So it actually masks that because it's anonymizing the traffic. They don't know where you are. They don't know where your IP address is because your IP address is the one that's going to be traced from the server effectively.
It's actually more specific than your postcode, isn't it? Because obviously
right.
code will cover a number of addresses, but
Right,
each of your devices will have a different IP address.
That's
so
right. Each
your
device
laptop,
having
your mobile phone.
Yeah. Every device generates a unique IP address for that device, and in actual fact, the most unique thing about a device is the MAC address, which is something completely separate. But yeah, essentially that's what it is. Now there are certain websites that use location software to determine where you are in order for you to connect to them. One of those is Netflix. I'm sure a lot of people, a number of, maybe not among, I use Netflix, but I'm sure there are a number of people, numerous people that use Netflix now. And they use, they basically don't allow you to connect if you're using a VPN, but there are ways around that because certain VPN providers, I think it's like one of them is ExpressVPN, are always finding a way of connecting using the VPN to the to such services, streaming services. So that's the advantage of a VPN, basically. And the other thing about it is that your internet service provider cannot throttle your speed. Can't see that you're throttling your speeds. Essentially, the great thing about a VPN though is if you are a person who uses public Wi-Fi, a VPN offers you that level of protection because of what you do with regards to accessing any data through your the VPN service. It means that it allows you to basically, it doesn't allow you to have your public sort of information displayed because it's not easy for them to actually see where you're going because of the VPN server they're connecting to. So, I mean, I always say to people, don't use public Wi-Fi unless you're confident that it's secure. It isn't usually because they're open access, which means they have to be open access, but everybody has to want to go in and access them in order to get, download stuff. So I always say if you can go without using a public Wi-Fi, it's better. If you must use one, then I always say it's best to be forewarned and have the best level of protection. And a VPN offers you, I wouldn't say there's nothing like 100% protection, but it offers you a good level of protection in terms of, if you're going to use public Wi-Fi, that's probably, I would say, the minimum you should have on your device.
D, if you don't use Wi-Fi when you're out, I don't.
Yeah.
It means you're using your data. So does that mean you're protected because it's your phone with the VPN on it? Or I'm not quite sure. I mean, if you're limited with your data, you end up paying more, but I'd rather do that than use a public Wi-Fi. So can you explain that to me? How
What do
that
you mean? So what do you mean by using more?
Well, if I'm outside, I don't use a Wi-Fi connection for looking at emails or something like that, because it will come up on my phone not connected. And I say, that's fine, I don't want to be connected. So then it goes onto my data, correct?
Yeah, you make a data. You have a data. You use a certain amount of data. Yes, when you go on, that's right.
And is that more secure
Yes,
using your
because
data?
when you're using data, you're not going through a you're not using public. You're using the network providers, access point to get through to a particular website or whatever. It does offer you a certain level of protection, but I mean, again, a VPN is useful anyway to have on our handset. It's not a must. You can get free VPN as well. You don't have to pay for a VPN. Again, like Farouk was asking about Avast. You can get free versions of VPNs, which are, I don't know how good they are because I've not looked into the free ones, but I'm sure there are some very good ones. In fact, if you buy certain ones, again, there's so many ones that are. And I think the better known ones are ones like Surfshark, ExpressVPN, Nord. The other thing you need to be made aware of with a VPN, you've got to make sure that the provider gives you a lot of. You have good access to a number of servers. I think Nord's got a very large number of servers you can access. Servers do go down from time to time, so then you can access another one. And also the other thing about VPNs is it does slow down traffic. So anything you use as a security measure on your device will slow down traffic. It doesn't matter because you are having to go through another connection point to access the internet. It's going to slow it down. Now it's a question of how much it slows it down by. Obviously, if it goes down to a crawl, it's no point. It's counterproductive to having it. However, if you're using it for, there are with the VPN. If you've got hundreds of servers, that means you can choose one which is the quickest. It usually gives you a list. The good providers say this is the fastest connection. This is good for downloading. This one's good for something else. And I know Nord do that. I think ExpressVPN also do that. So they'll segment it by what you want to use it for. So those are things that you need to bear in mind as well.
So when you go on a site, very often it will say, can I have your location? And I always say no, because that would then counteract the VPN. Yes,
really. I mean, the thing is, the reason why they say your site is because they want to basically localize their, they want to bombard you with advertising data, and they want to say, what they want to basically sell you effectively. There is no reason to give your location away unless there's certain companies that will ask you for the location. I think certain government websites, certain DWP websites, certain banking websites, of course, is typical. Some bank sites, mobile banking doesn't allow you to come in from outside the country. You can only access it whilst you're in the UK. I'm not saying that's with all. I'm not sure how many there are now, but I think it kind of counteracts the whole idea of having online banking, because if you might be abroad and you want to access your account, there were certain banks which wouldn't allow it. However, I think now you would be able to even access your bank account when you're somewhere in Europe. So yeah, I mean, I know certain shopping sites don't allow you to actually access them. Certain companies won't allow you to access, services. I think the BBC does not allow you to access BBC programming outside of the UK because of the license implications. And the other thing about license, this is going off a bit topic now. According to Martin Lewis, if you download stuff to your box and you only watch stuff that is not live, and you don't watch the BBC live, and you don't access the iPlayer specifically, you don't have to pay for a license. It's a grey area, but you fill a form in, you send the form back to the BBC or whoever takes care of the licensing, and you make a declaration you're only using it for streaming. Because if you're streaming from Netflix or from Prime, so long as the program that you're watching on Netflix is not being shown simultaneously on the TV at the same time, you don't have you're not obliged to pay for a license. And you can confirm this by looking at Martin Lewis, money saving expert. However, there are people now, especially younger people, who don't use anything that's not recorded live and not watching live effectively, with the exception of the BBC, is effectively you don't have to pay for a license because you're not watching it live.
Yeah.
I don't watch anything live. Even, I don't watch anything live. I mean, I basically record pretty much everything, so I watch it later.
We were with EE for our television. We still have them for broadband and telephone, which is actually a part of BT. They
Yeah.
stopped their TV facility on the 31st of March.
Yeah.
So we just use Fire Sticks now.
Yeah.
So how does the Fire Stick work then? Because we can still watch live television, but we find it excellent, better than the previous system that we had.
I'm not sure about the Fire Stick. I have to look into that one actually, because I'm not sure how that actually what the law is regarding Fire Sticks. I'll have to Google. I'll have to sort of. Yeah, I'll have to look it up on Google or whatever it is. I'll have to look on Martin Lewis if there's anything on that. But that's a bit of a grey area because have you got all the other? Can you access movie channels on there as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything.
So you can access Sky Movies.
Yes, everything
So
that's available.
Effectively, I would say then that is not legal because you're effectively what you're doing is you're streaming pay to view content for free on a Fire Stick. Now, a lot of people are doing it, but the whole thing about the Fire Stick is a grey area because if you're accessing other programs that you like, for example, BT Sport is a subscription channel, and effectively what will happen is that people are actually accessing. So it's not strictly legal because you're not actually committing the offence. A person who's actually providing you the software or whatever. I mean, it's a grey area really. So essentially, no, you don't need a license because effectively you're not going to have this programs you're going to have on it anyway in the first place.
Well, David pays for Prime. So we thought, well, that's Prime. That's
a lot of people are doing it, Diane. If I tell you how many people I know are using sticks now, Fire Sticks, and there's loads of people using them, because to be honest with you, a lot of people now are not. I mean, with streaming content now, a lot of people are not prepared to pay. For pay for the Sky subscription and then pay for a license on top of it. It seems ridiculous. But I know for a fact that if you're predominantly streaming, and streaming being the key word in this, whatever you're streaming, except with the exception of the BBC, if you're accessing the BBC or the BBC iPlayer, then you have to have a license. If you don't, and if you're recording to your device, for example, you're not watching it through iPlayer, you're watching it and you're watching it live, you don't have to pay for a license.
Yeah.
So, I tell people coming into property, I say, listen, I don't have a license because I don't watch live TV. It's up to you to be responsible for your own, if you want to get a license, get one. But if you're watching it, streaming, then that's fine.
Well, we had BT in the beginning with their television package, and it was very expensive. It was out of £80 a month for one television. Then when we went to EE, it went down to 33 for the whole package, including broadband, which we were very happy with. But the only thing was with BT, if we wanted to watch a film, we had to pay most of the time. And with EE, it was the same. Very few films were free. Whereas with this, you don't pay anything. And we were a little bit fed up with paying for monthly for the TV thing and then having to pay to watch a film as well. So we never used to watch any films. And as soon as we put the Fire Stick on, we saw 3 very good films for nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about having a Fire Stick. Like I said, a lot of people are using Fire Sticks now, and I think one of my friends has got about 1,000 channels on the Fire Stick. He's got every single channel you can think of. And he's got programs from India, programs from he's got the American programs, all the American sort of stuff you don't get here, and he's really happy. I mean, he doesn't pay a subscription. I mean, I'm going to be going to my Sky box shortly, and I'll probably be going on the same channel, the same way, because I mean, I don't see the point of paying for it anymore. It just seems to me it's a waste of money,
We have a friend who has worked for Sky, and his brother used to work for Sky before he died. And he said, when I retire from Sky, they will pay for my Sky application subscription for, I think, 2 or 3 years after retirement. And of course, he doesn't pay now because he's an employee. But he said, once that subscription runs out, I would never, ever pay for Sky, because he said, I don't think it's, good value for money. And that's an employee of Sky.
I mean, it's not, because the thing is, you're paying for everything. They charge you for pay-per-view. You know, I mean, it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, there was the Anthony Joshua fight, I think last year I watched, and I got a link on it to watch it online. Friend sent it to me. Actually, my girlfriend sent it to me, and I remember watching it. It wasn't the greatest quality, but I watched the fight. I don't think Anthony Joshua, with his 80 million pounds, is going to be very worried about 20 pounds, not getting 20 pounds in his pocket. I just think it's, I just think the whole, and they're charging, I think Sky were charging 30 pounds for the pay. I think it's just extortionate.
Yeah.
And it's like with the Sky, I mean, I don't know about Phil. I don't know if you got paid. Have you got Sky or Virgin, Phil?
No, I wouldn't get Sky because I'm saying.
Well, there you are. Then. See, that answers a lot. That says a lot. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to get rid of mine. I used to have. Like,
but one of the things about Sky, obviously, is that again that ties in with your they have different licensing deals for different regions, don't they? So again, I think that ties in with the IP address. So if you're in a certain country, like when I was visiting my pal in Germany, we were trying to watch the Rugby World Cup, and he couldn't get it on German TV because BBC wouldn't let him do it because they had the.
It wasn't licensed. It wasn't licensed. Yeah.
So so we had to go on a VPN and watch it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
it's useful.
Yeah,
so,
it is useful.
So it can be done.
It can be done. I mean,
we seem to have slipped a bit off topic there.
But I mean, generally speaking, with regards to keeping yourself safe on I mean, I'm giving you an idea what a VPN is, what it does. It's not strictly within the remits of it does actually it does come in within the malware and antivirus because it forms part of that sort of broader sort of package of security measures. Now,
Fire sticks and that don't really.
Fire sticks and all that. Actually, you have to have a VPN on your Fire Stick. It's recommended you have a VPN because it gives you a level of anonymity when you're connecting to. I think a lot of the Fire Sticks now come with a VPN. They ask you to download a VPN on it to protect yourself. So but a VPN is very useful. That gives you an idea of what a VPN does.
Prime on it, so it's automatic.
Ask Dave.
No, I'll check it.
Okay.
So I mean, I think really, in terms of the best thing. To basically give you a sort of summary in terms of where we are at this moment is vigilance is the first thing you can have. To always be vigilant. I mean, if you've got a lot of people have smartphones. I don't know many people who don't have them now. I mean, I've got a friend of mine who works for a government. I don't know which government department he works for. He's a cybersecurity expert, and I was asking him. I'm trying to get him on. I did say to him, "Can you come and do a talk?" He goes, "I'm very busy." He said, "I will try and fit something in at some stage." I've asked him because Diane asked me to. I spoke to him, managed to get hold of him the other day, and he said, "I'll try and do something. I'll let you know when I've got a slot." He said, "But at the moment, because there's been such a huge increase in phishing and all that because of of the working from home and all that sort of stuff." So he essentially told me that the reason I mentioned him is because his phone is one of the old phones. He's got one of those old Nokia phones, and it's like something out of Noah's Ark. If you look at it, it makes phone calls, receives phone calls, and receives text messages. That's it. And he goes, "That's all I want a mobile phone to do. I don't want to make a mobile phone. I have a mobile phone which basically I can use, I want to surf the internet on because it's not really what I want it for." So essentially, if your vigilance is very important, if you're out and about and you're expecting an email, as I said, the best thing is stop for a point. If you can stop for a minute. If you're on a bus or you're on a train, well, if you're not underground, obviously, if you're on the overground train, make sure you take your time to have a look at what it is you're getting and make sure you're sure about what you're clicking on, because a lot of us can get a lot of emails, a lot of spam emails in a day. And if we don't know what we're getting, we can easily have our security compromised. Then the next thing to look at is how you use your device. If you've got a mobile device, a tablet, especially so, it's good to have looking at a VPN. The VPN is better. You don't have to have antivirus. It's not absolutely necessary. A VPN would be a good stopgap measure. If you must use public Wi-Fi, some people don't want to pay for data, so they would use the shopping centers Wi-Fi, which okay is fine, but you have to give yourself a level of protection. So a VPN is a good thing to look at. That gives you that level of protection that I've discussed. And then the other thing is then look at antivirus programs for your devices at home. The antivirus program effectively gives you a level of protection against like malware, ransomware, spyware. And you've got to make sure that when you're buying it, look at all the features very carefully and what it's offering you. Because a lot of them are now not antivirus, they're called internet suites or their internet protection. And look at what it's offering you. Firewall's important, all that sort of stuff, malware protection, spyware, it will tell you. So yeah, I mean, that gives you an idea of what sort of things to look for essentially.
You did mention Malwarebytes earlier, Dee. That was the one that I was been using for a while. I think you said it wasn't free anymore. It was free about a year ago.
Yeah, I think they keep
anything about that is you keep getting these.
I used to use Malwarebytes for when I was probably one of the first early adopters to I mean years ago I started using something called Adaware Plus and Adaware, which is basically what Malwarebytes is does now. And that was one of the earliest programs I remember using for blocking spyware and whatever it was. So basically, the Malwarebytes is a good program. It used to be, but from what I've heard, it's become a chargeable. To get the full benefits of it, you get the chargeable version. So I don't know. I haven't used it in a while because my sort of when my server's back up and running, which will be shortly, I basically will have it. Probably install it again. But yeah, no, Malwarebytes is used to be one of the best ones actually. It's been very, very good against spyware, ransomware.
Yeah, I think it is still free if you keep deleting and reinstalling it, which is
all right. Yeah, that's pretty much what you need to do then. But it's good. I mean, it's a good thing. Like I say, for the antivirus, people don't want to pay for it necessarily. I've got a friend of mine again who's an IT expert, and he doesn't pay for. He uses Avast. And it works for him. So I mean, he said I've never had any issues. So in fact, the Avast free version and the paid for version, according to which there's the free version just as well as the paid for version. There's no reason to get the paid for version by then. So that also is something to consider as well. When you're downloading antiviral software.
Okay, thanks, Dee. So has anybody else got any further questions they want to raise?
People always say that you don't need antivirus because they do it themselves. And Microsoft, when we got the 10, Sam was saying that you don't need antivirus because Microsoft do it. And then the other one is the Ubuntu Linux software. Apparently, because it's run by all the gurus, the IT gurus, you don't need it on that. So what's your opinion?
Well, I mean, Ubuntu is open source. So it means that anyone can contribute to its development. So essentially, the open source software tends to suffer less from, hacking than, sort of the more established ones. But that's not to say that it doesn't get compromised. But really, because it's open source by its very nature, it tends to be reasonably pretty safe in that respect. I mean, Ubuntu, but I mean, again, I wouldn't say anything's 100% safe. With regards to Windows, I think Windows comes bundled with Windows Defender, and Windows Defender is the level of, they give you an inbuilt kind of protection to the to any attacks. Windows Defender is it's good for what it is, but I mean, that doesn't stop you from downloading any antivirus software on top of it. I'm not sure how effective Windows Defender is. It must be reasonably good, because if Sam said it comes bundled with it, I mean, you don't have to buy one. So yeah, in that respect, it's fine. It'll offer you a level of protection against getting viruses. I'm not sure about the malware and spyware and all that stuff, but I know that against viruses, you'll be protected against it. Yeah.
And Apple?
Apple don't come with any kind of, bundled antivirus. So Apple devices are susceptible to being compromised. It'd be interesting to note how, if you run malware on a malware program, malware detection program on a Apple device, how much potential information it will harvest about what you've got on your system. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that Apple never given you any kind of, as far as I'm aware, they never bundled any antivirus program with their system, which I think is extremely short-sighted. I mean, you're paying loads of money for the device, and they don't even offer you anything as in terms of virus protection. So I think it's a good idea to look at perhaps getting, you know, you can sort of VPN on your device. You don't have to have an antivirus program, but it's good to have a level of protection on any device you've got. Yeah.
You were just talking about, oh, sorry. You were just talking about the Microsoft. Diane just mentioned about the Microsoft that Sam said you don't have to put on an antivirus protection on there. My laptop keeps on coming up as your antivirus needs renewing. Is that just the actual, I can ignore that, it's just a particular antivirus package you wanted me to put more on?
What have you got? Windows 10?
Same as Diane, you know,
Yeah, Diane's using Windows 10, so you must
laptops.
Yeah, so you're using Windows 10 as well, yeah?
I must be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Sam went through the
By
thing
definition,
with me,
Rani, you know, there's
opening
new
it up.
virus coming out all the time. So, you know, they will keep developing new ones and releasing them, and then they will try and infect your computers. So they do need to upgrade the protection from time to time. So that's why they're always asking you to schedule runs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right, so it just doesn't, I don't need to subscribe to an viral package or anything like that, because this one's already got an existing one.
You have to go into your system settings, see what you've got in terms of the protection, and then if the protection turned on, are you getting the updates? Because, like as Phil said, virus definitions change pretty much daily, if not
so it needs to update itself
not
regularly.
daily, because you know, these things happen by the very definitions. Viruses are always kind of, it's like a COVID virus. They're always mutating and they're always changing, and there's always kinds of new viruses coming out. So it's always good to have a look at that. I mean, you first of all got to make sure it's turned on if you've got it. Secondly, you've got to make sure you're getting the updates. So, you know, I mean, Microsoft send the thing, and the other important thing with Microsoft especially is making sure you're downloading the updates, because there's so many updates that Microsoft send out that you've got to make sure you're downloading the relevant updates, and you're downloading them on a regular basis. So if you set your computer to download automatically and install Windows updates, if you don't really know what you're doing with the updates, it's a good idea to do it on that basis, because then they will do it in the background.
Right. I think that's what my one is set up to do.
So
automated update.
What are you getting in terms of this? You're saying that you're getting that message about.
No, there's just a little caption, a little square caption that comes up, and it says my antivirus needs renewing.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, you maybe need to look into that further. Look on the system settings, see why it's telling you that.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Well, looks like that's about it. Okay, thanks a lot, Dee.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Just to remind everyone, so we'll be